May begin.
Thank you, Chairman Van Drew, ranking members Crockett and Raskin, for giving me the opportunity to appear before you today. The views I express are my own, should not be construed as representing the official position of the Heritage Foundation. For over a decade, I've studied how leftist nonprofits, particularly George Soros' Open Societies Foundations, team up with government agencies like USAID to push the pet causes of the left domestically and overseas. These agendas, promoting divisive issues like transgenderism for minors, euthanasia, and drug decriminalization, lack broad support in the US and harm our national security interests by alienating conservative societies overseas. Eliminating this nexus between big left and our money is at the heart of much of what DOGE has done since President Trump took office. I have firsthand experience with how this nexus can hurt Americans. In March 2017, I wrote a Heritage Foundation report calling for Congress and the State Department to investigate joint efforts between Soros groups and USAID. I wrote that in the promotion of radical agendas in several countries, USAID has found an ideal partner in George Soros, who throws his considerable fortune behind efforts to fight traditional Western values. The hearings I called for in my piece never took place until today. But something did happen to me. 2.5 months after my report, a shadowy outfit calling itself the Organized Crime and Corruption Reporting Project published a sinister article that smeared me and the Heritage Foundation. When I looked into it, it turned out that the OCCRP was funded both by Soros foundations and USAID. I quickly wrote a column refuting their smears and said the OCCRP did what bullies, and I quickly wrote a column refuting their smears, and the OCCRP did what bullies always do. It backtracked, amending its report. But let's not lose sight of what happened. A foreign entity backed by Soros and my own tax dollars was attacking me, an American, for daring to question the influence of the nexus in Macedonia. I want to underline that I believe it is Soros' right to spend his money supporting his convictions. I may not agree with these ideas, but I would not call for interference in any American's right to act politically. Likewise, of course, some of the USAID programs did do good. I'm glad that Secretary Rubio says he will keep some programs if they advance U.S. interests. What I do take issue with is the U.S. government working with leftist NGOs to promote causes with which large majorities of Americans disagree and which are inimical to U.S. interests. You see, the left has cleverly built a machine to finance itself with money that the taxman extorts from hardworking Americans. Because it has captured the cultural heights, this new left has been able to invent some terms that make resistance difficult. Thus, we have sustainability, sex workers, and compassion care, rather than economy-crushing climate extremism, prostitution, and human trafficking, and killing grandma once she's become a burden. It doesn't matter what you call any of these activities, however. They all turn cities into Dante-esque hellholes and leave behind human debris, men and women who are empty husks rather than beings with purpose and hope. The collusion between big left and taxpayer money peaked under the Obama and Biden administrations. In Guatemala, USAID's focus on activism, activists who also received financing from Soros institutions and the Ford Foundation, frustrated the pro-US President Alejandro Yamatei, who once told me he thought our embassy was undermining his government. In Hungary, USAID provided funding to the OSF, which went on to spend $781 million between 2016 and 2023 in pursuit of its political agenda. Hungary, lest we forget, is a strategically located U.S. ally, whether liberals like its pro-U.S. prime minister or not. And the same thing happened in Macedonia, where an advisor to former President Ivanov, also pro-US, told me that USAID and OSF had begun a regime change operation. Dismantling this nexus is critical. This is why President Trump has taken up arms against woke universities, museums, public broadcasters, a battle being played out in the Senate today, and other institutions laundering the hard-earned money of Americans on behalf of cultural Marxism. However, I also urge this committee to demand a comprehensive audit of USAID in government entities to expose how taxpayer money is spent and with whom. I want to thank you for your time and for letting me address this important matter.
Thank you, Mr. Gonzalez. Ambassador DeBaca, You may begin.
Chairman Van Drew, Ranking and Chair.
Mike Gonzalez, Angelus T. Arredondo e Pluribus Unum Senior Fellow at the Heritage Foundation, spoke before Congress, sharing his concerns regarding the use of taxpayer money to fund leftist agendas through USAID. He highlighted the collaboration between left-wing nonprofits, particularly George Soros's Open Societies Foundations, OSF, and U.S. government agencies, which he argued promoted causes that lacked broad public support in the U.S. and harmed national security interests abroad. Gonzalez, with over a decade of research on this issue, detailed how these organizations, backed by significant funding, advanced controversial issues such as transgender rights for minors, euthanasia, and drug decriminalization. He explained that these policies often alienated conservative societies overseas, potentially undermining U.S. interests. Reflecting on his personal experience, Gonzalez recounted how, in March 2017, he published a Heritage Foundation report urging Congress and the State Department to investigate the joint efforts between Soros groups and USAID in pushing radical agendas in several countries. Shortly after the report's release, the Organized Crime and Corruption Reporting Project, OCCRP, a group funded by both Soros Foundations and USAID, launched a smear campaign against him. However, Gonzalez swiftly refuted their claims, only to discover that the OCCRP had backed down after his rebuttal. Despite this, Gonzalez noted that the attack demonstrated how foreign entities, supported by U.S. taxpayer dollars, were targeting American citizens for questioning their influence. Gonzalez emphasized that while Soros had every right to support his political beliefs financially, he strongly opposed the U.S. government partnering with such organizations to promote agendas that were out of step with the majority of Americans. He criticized the manipulation of language by the left to make these causes more palatable, using terms like sustainability, sex work, and compassion care to cover up what he called damaging activities like climate extremism, prostitution, and euthanasia. He pointed out that under the Obama and Biden administrations, USAID funded groups that actively worked against pro-U.S. governments in countries like Guatemala, Hungary, and Macedonia. Gonzalez explained that USAID's funding of Soros-backed organizations in Hungary led to over $780 million being spent between 2016 and 2023 to further their political agenda. He recalled how U.S. diplomats in these countries, particularly in Hungary, were perceived by local leaders as undermining their governments, which were seen as strategic U.S. allies. The speaker urged the committee to examine and dismantle the relationship between left-wing nonprofits and taxpayer-funded U.S. government agencies. He also called for a comprehensive audit of USAID and other government entities to scrutinize how taxpayer money was being spent and to reveal the connections between these funds and foreign agendas. Gonzalez concluded by thanking the committee for allowing him to address what he considered an important matter for the future of U.S. foreign policy and the effective use of taxpayer resources.